Welcome again, dear traders, to another week, 11th to 15th of August 2025. It's great to have you as always. I'm Atomashi Dania, Vestralis Global Market Analyst. Um, Whichever part of the world you're joining us from, welcome, Mekabo, Salbona, Mambo, Karibu. It's great to have you. So, last week was dry. Really, really poor week. We had poor economic data, or rather, data that didn't move the markets per se released. And apart from Trump's comments, nothing else was significant enough to cause significant volumes of volatility in the market. As a result of that, we had very few trading opportunities, sadly. But this week, we expect some decent profits. And I'll show you why in a bit. So, as always, at the start of the week, we're starting out with our fundamental analysis. What do we expect to see this week? Um, we expect to see the US CPI data. Now, pertaining to pairs Euro USD, GBP USD, the USD JPY, and Ethereum, that's what we're looking at this week. And I want you to take a look in the markets and monitor these pairs very strongly, especially because of the fact that we're going to be having the US CPI data tomorrow, Tuesday, okay? CPI data for July. Today is Technicals Day. We do not expect any significant data from the economic calendar. And on Thursday, we expect the US Producer Price Index, also for July. So, what's the US Producer Price Index? That's the PPI and the CPI data. The CPI data, of course, is a consumer price index. Both data measure inflation, CPI and PPI, the Producer Price Index and Consumer Price Index. They measure inflation in the US economy from the consumer end of things and the producer end of things. So, you need to look at that very strongly. And why is that so? Of course, you know that Trump has enacted several tariff wars, trade wars with many countries, right? Some of them um, got kicked off, or rather kicked off last week. And businesses already started to reshuffle even before they kicked off. And now, as we enter the third quarter of 2025, those effects, the effects of the tariff wars, may start to show in the market. So any slight change, especially not favoring the US, could signal or trigger major movements, just like what happens with the jobs data on Friday 2 weeks ago. So keep your eyes peeled for this. For me, the key data, CPI and PPI, especially the CPI data. And Wednesday, we have sort of technicals data, right? Technicals day, not much to be expected. On Friday, we expect the retail sales data, which is the total value of retail sales made at that level for July. More than expected for the month of July is good for the US dollar. And then the prelim UAM consumer sentiment and inflation expectations that measures the sentiment of consumers, right, pertaining to spending and inflation. Increased figures favor the US and the US dollar. Decreased figures do not. Now, we're looking at Ethereum this week as far as crypto is concerned. Of course, we know that more tariff war escalations or global uncertainties, or perhaps any form of global crisis, could affect the markets and cause increase um, uh, volume of transactions. But more importantly, we had something play out over the course of the weekend and last week. Trump advised Americans to dump retirement funds in crypto. That's crazy. Now, statements like this could fuel Bitcoin. In fact, it made Bitcoin push past 120,000, 120K throughout the weekend. So that steam, if it survives and if it remains in the market, we could see it affect Ethereum or crypto to higher levels. Ethereum also pushed to higher levels. So if more comments around this get released again, come out from Trump, or perhaps if the steam from over the weekend is still there, it could be the fuel needed to push crypto currencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum to higher levels. So be on the lookout for that. Now, let's go to the charts as always. What do we have from the charts? So the first pair I want us to look at, of course, is the Euro USD. So the Euro on the daily chart is giving off some sort of negative divergence, as you can see right there. RSI, this is RSI negative divergence, indicating that we expect a bearish correction very soon. On the 4-hour chart, it already retested a very, very significant trend line and fell very massively. But right now, it's currently reacting to the 200-day moving average right around here. And if you follow the rectangle, that's around 200-day moving average there. This red line, and also the psychological level of 1.1700. So ever since it touched 1.1700, it formed some sort of rejection, price rejection. Okay. This happened on the 7th of August, Thursday-ish. So it's from price rejection around 1.1700. On the 1-hour chart, formed a symmetrical triangle, indicating that price could go either way at this point in time. But we'll see something similar to a sort of gap right around here. I won't call it a fair value gap, but a sort of gap, right? Somewhat fair value gap, yes, that could attract price right now to lower positions. And right now, it's also looking strong below the symmetrical triangle, as you can see right there. Okay, looking strong below the symmetrical triangle. On the 30 minutes chart, we see negative divergence on MACD, indicating that a correction, a fall is coming, a brief fall or bearish correction is coming, or reversal altogether. RSI negative divergence too is also present. Now, on the 1-hour chart, on the same 30 minutes rather, we have the heads and shoulders pattern. If you follow the yellow circles, head, left shoulder, right shoulder, and it's currently below the trend line right there. Okay, we see an ascending trend line, price breaking below it, and it's looking like it wants to retest the trend line right now. So for me, if price breaks below 1.1640, this guy, then our target 1.1620 on the sell. If it goes below that, perhaps 1.1600. And if it goes below that, we could see it touch upon 1.1575 or 1550 this week, ladies and gentlemen. But if it heads above the heads and shoulders, the high, and goes above the psychological level of 1.1700 right there, then my next most likely target will be 1.1721. Above that, 1750, and above that, 1770. So what's my take on Euro USD this week? I'm bearish. I favor bearish positions, sell positions on the Euro USD, unless, of course, I see a break above the key resistance level of 1.1700. And on the fundamental end of things, the tariff wars seem to have come to a calm. Okay, but then again, it's important to look at CPI data. The expectations from CPI data this week is that, um, let's see, expectation tomorrow is that price CPI would fall. CPI wouldn't be as high as expected. If that happens, core CPI, meanwhile, would rise by 0.1%. So if that happens, that could be the fall needed to push price above 1.17. Okay, so if it happens, then you should look at higher levels. So uh, basically speaking, based on the technicals right now, I favor bearish positions, but if I have to sell, I'm doing short-term bearish positions because generally speaking, the US dollar has been weakened by so many tariffs slammed upon it by Donald Trump. So let's see how that plays out um, in the course of the week. I favor short-term bearish positions only. Short-term sell positions only on Euro USD. In the longer term, if it breaks above 1.1700, then I switch my stance to a bullish one. If I see a clear break, especially surrounding the CPI and retail sales data this week. So let's go to the next GBP USD. Okay, so this guy, of course, we know is just around the resistance border of a channel right there. Okay, it's around the resistance border, indicating that it could fall at any moment, perhaps targeting the support border, the lower border here. Now, on the 4-hour chart, we see that it's currently approaching the psychological level of 1.3500, the blue line right there. It's approaching that. On the 30 minutes chart, however, it has formed a rising wedge. As you can see, a rising wedge right there. So, if price breaks below the rising wedge, what does it mean for a rising wedge? It means we could see a brief correction, a fall in price, a reversal. So if price breaks below the rising wedge, my first take profit level will be set at 3426. And if it breaks below that, then it could touch upon 1.3400, which for me is the key support level. If price breaks below 3400, then we could see it touch upon 3380, below that 3360, below that 3334, and below that 3300. Okay, but if price heads above 3475, then we could see it approach the 200-day moving average. That's the red line you see right there. And in essence, coincidentally react to 3500 psychological level. So if it breaks above 3475, price could touch upon 3500, and above that 3522. So I favor short-term bearish positions on GBP USD this week. If the CPI data is good for tomorrow, for the US, we could see a massive fall in GBP USD. Okay, but if it's weak, it could rise to 1.3522 as discussed, or 3500. So the fuel for the week, I believe, will be the CPI for tomorrow. That will determine what price could do. If it favors the US, regardless of all the tariff wars, could see a massive fall all the way perhaps to 3300. So be on the lookout for that. I favor short-term bearish positions, short-term sell positions on GBP USD. I'm neutral on this pair, open to trading at to 3500 on the news, and heading back down to short-term bearish, trading short-term bearish positions on a sell. For this week, I stand on neutral, on the neutral end for GBP USD. Now, USD JPY. So of course, as always, on the weekly chart, price is at the support border of a channel. Okay, it's currently reacting to 148.00 psychological level. And on the 4-hour chart, yes, still in an ascending channel, as you see right there. Okay, the green lines, the ascending channel. But guess what? It's still reacting also to the 148.00 psychological level. You can see that significant reaction point. It's not gone above that. But on lower time frames, from training on Friday, we see that it has formed a strong triple bottom. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. With some price rejection around that level. It's currently reacting. You see price rejection 1, 2, 3 at the 4-hour chart. So this forms strong support. Okay. Now, if price breaks above 1.4775, clearly my next most likely target will be on a buy, 148.00. If it goes above that, 148.28, and if it goes above that, 148.50, and above that, perhaps 148.75. But if price heads below the support level and breaks below 146.69, then we could see it touch upon 146.34. Below that, it could go fall below to 146.00 psychological levels. What's my take on this guy? I favor short-term bullish positions. Short-term bullish positions on USD JPY today, targeting the TP levels given. Same way I favor short-term bearish positions on Euro USD. And I'm neutral on GBP USD. But I'm still open to short-term bearish positions on GBP USD. So these are for the FX pairs. For crypto, what do we have on Ethereum? Simply put, Ethereum has found some steam from Trump's last comments to break above its key resistance level here and here, 4,100 psychological level. If it breaks above its current consolidation, it breaks above 4,003 clearly, then its next most likely target could be 4,400. Okay, this one right here. If it goes above that, the next level rising could be 4,500. But if price happens to break below 4140, then I will target scalping moves selling to 4,001. And if it falls below 4,001 and goes as low as 3,009, then it could trigger sell positions. It could trigger a massive fall all the way to 3800, 3,800 or 3,700. So my key support is placed at 3,009. My key resistance is placed at 4,003. What am I? I am bullish. I favor buy positions on Ethereum. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the weekly outlook for the week. I wish you a profitable trading week. Have a blast. I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.